1% of dudes rapping, they ain't nice as me. 98% ain't live the same type of life as me. The judge gave me life and then they sent me where the life is be. That level 4 with depth and vice, the type of stuff they like to see. Two choices, fight or flee. I refuse to die a chump. I never been a mark, but damn, it's scary when that riot jump. I seen dudes cry, get pumped, and some sexually brutalized. Knew a dude who lost his life and he was only doing 5 year-long racial fights when homie all you do is ride. Lonely days and nights up in a hole causing suicide. From the moment you arrive, you see the Mexican mafia, AB skinheads with big giant swastikas, pro-black philosophers, the BGF, the Kumi, and Muslims who will murk you from the nation to the Sunni. That MS was loony, quick to ride up on they rival. Even Christians went to church, hide knives up in a Bible. Political and tribal, the Crips and Damus, the Long Beach, the Hubs and the Dubs and the Grooves, the IE, the Bakersfield, the Dago Pyrus, the Hustlers quick to roll, the gangsters don't move. Whatever click you choose.
Say what's cracking, YouTube? It's your boy 16 to life, and I'm back like I'm on a parole violation. Yard down. You already know what it is, man. It's your boy. Hey, listen, be sure to go to my playlist. Check my playlist out. I got it updated for some good stories. I got it, of course, categorized in good stories, funny stories, dramatic stories. And also, if you like my music, you can find more of my music there. Now, let's hop right up into this video, man. So, I notice a lot of times, when I do stories or interviews or whatever, based on riots, melees, especially riots or melees between races, that in the comments, there are a lot of sometimes hostile comments, right? Not necessarily directed towards me, but you may have people battling, going back and forth in the comments, right? So I was wondering, like, why is it important sometimes to people who runs prison? Because when we talking about prison, right, even though I know, like I say, of course, I did a lot of time in prison. So I know there are many intelligent people in prison, right? But in the minds of most people, when we talking about prison, we talking about the lumpen proletariat, right? And, for those of you guys who may not be familiar with that term, that was a term coined by Karl Marx, right? Basically, it's the lowest of the low. The lumpen proletariat is a person who can only make money by selling their labor. That's the only way they can make money. And so it's basically, we talking about the homeless, the vagrant, people in prison, right? And unfortunately, what class is seen lower than the incarcerated? There is no form of people that's seen lower than the incarcerated, even the homeless, right? Because I would rather be homeless than be incarcerated, because when you're incarcerated, the choices that you make for yourself are extremely minimal. When you are homeless, you always can get up on any given day and decide to change your circumstances and take steps that will help you change your circumstances. So once again, dudes are arguing about what race runs prison. And like I say, who wants to be proud of a race running prison, right? Especially now, nowadays, right? More back in the earlier days, prisons was controlled by a lot, to a big degree, of the convicts. The convicts, they did the typing for the captains and they were clerks. They made bed moves and made a whole lot of things happen. But as society has become more modern, so has prison become more modern. And a lot of that control, a lot of, those things were taken out of the hands of convicts, right? So clearly the COs run prison, because they tell you when to eat, they tell you when to sleep for the most part, they tell you when to get up, when to go to chow, they can shut the whole prison down for whatever and give no excuse. So, clearly the police run the prison, right? During the whole time I was incarcerated, I have honestly never seen one race try to impose its will on another race. I have seen, different races or organizations, they may get into it over a particular phone, over a handball or something like that. But as far as just flat out trying to tell another race what they must do and what they can and cannot do, I've honestly never seen that, right? Each race pretty much governs its own, right? And so, like I said, I was trying to ponder, why some people get so caught up in arguing over, prison races and prison wars. I come to believe that, of course, it's a connection, right? We all have a connection to our race. We all have racial pride. And by being a minority, I definitely don't think it's nothing wrong with that, you know. But I think it's important to remember, man, that a lot of these stories is 15, 20, 25 years old. And, you know, they're stories, you know. We're not necessarily trying to glorify these stories when we tell it. Some people may ask, well, why do you guys tell those stories? Well, you know, we tell the stories for different reasons. Me personally, it's something that I honestly just stumbled into, telling prison stories. And I've told that story many times before. But now, combined, I have over 7 million views with all my stories. It's many prison channels that have way more than that. So obviously, someone finds these prison stories interesting. And so for the most part, that's why they're told, you know. I call prison the place that everybody wants to know, but nobody wants to go. You know, it's interesting for some people to hear what goes on behind those walls. They want to know if the things that we have experienced, if they match up to, I guess, all the myths and stuff that they have heard about prison, right? But none of these people that's on these in the comments arguing about, you know, this race, my race is better than yours and my race is tougher than yours. I bet you none of these people would volunteer to go back to prison for the next 10 years and make sure their race dominates in all these race wars. I damn sure know I wouldn't, you know. It reminds me one time, man, a dude came on in my comments, right? And initially we was having a dialogue, but eventually it turned out that this dude was making threats to me, right? And so let me give you guys a small synopsis of what happened, right? So I did an interview with a friend, and I'll try to remember to leave the link to that story, right? I interviewed a friend who I was locked up with, and he was recalling when he had got to prison and he had seen Hispanic from the north stabbed and killed right in front of his cell. So somebody left a comment saying that, hey man, you know, that never happened, because if it did, the dude who left the comment was also a northerner. He said that never happened because if it did, you know, we have a tight structure and I would have heard about it or whatever. And so initially he asked me to take that down, right? I told him, well, listen, man, you know, I've done a lot of time with this dude. I know his character. This dude is not just to just get up on here and make up a story like that. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not just to take it down because you tell me that it didn't happen, right? So he left a comment or two back and forth, and he got upset behind that. Then it went from asking me to demanding that I take it down. I had another dude who was a northerner tap in with me at the same time. He said, yeah, man, you know, that did happen. The story did happen. Now, I guess the dude was what is known as a new flower. And to me, that was the first time that I had ever even heard that term. So I guess to my understanding, what a new flower is a person who's a northerner, but he's not up under the destruction of the northerner. I guess he disagrees with their politics. And so I guess this dude who happened to be stabbed to death in front of the dude I interviewed was a new flower. So the chances of maybe that dude explaining all the politics to the dude I interviewed, maybe he didn't know the difference between a northerner and a new flower or whatever, you know. So at any rate, the dude who initially contacted me was demanding I take the story down. And then it got to the point, he said, you know, well, he started making some disparaging remarks about another dude who had been killed in prison, Yogi, talking about how nothing happened in retaliation for that, which it did. He just didn't happen to know about it. But anyway, then he went to telling me that, hey, man, you better take that story down because you don't want a negative reaction behind these walls. Now, keep it 100. I don't want anybody to get hurt in prison. But at the end of the day, man, you think I give two top ramens about what happens behind those walls? You know what I'm saying? I'm not just to allow nobody to press no line on me about a story, you know what I'm saying? Telling me I better take a story down or it's going to be, yeah, that's the exact term he used. It's going to be an adverse reaction behind these walls. So just to me, sometimes the way people can get riled up behind these stories is intriguing, especially when I haven't had too many comments, if any, from people who were actually involved in the particular story that I'm talking about that's getting riled up. All the people that's getting riled up, most of them was never locked up in prison. None of them were never in these particular stories that happened, you know. But like I say, so it's crazy to me, right? That the way that people will go back and forth. I did a story not too long ago, and I forget exactly what it was about. But there was two dudes, a black dude and a Hispanic dude, going back and forth in a long thread they had with each other. Now, for a minute, I thought it was cool because when they was going back in the thread, neither one of them was being disrespectful. And I really appreciated that because in these days and times, you know, I went to prison in 94, so way before the social media. But I've noticed since I have been freed that for some people, it's extremely easy to get disrespectful on social media, right? And I think that a lot of former prisoners or convicts, you know, that's something a lot of us don't get caught up in because prison is based on a whole lot of respect, you know. We call it a cell soldier. It's something that's deeply frowned upon. You know, a cell soldier is a person that's, when he's locked up in the cell, he's woofing, he's talking a whole bunch of crap. But then when they let him out, he don't do nothing or whatever. So, you know, to me, being a cyber soldier is what I'll call it. You know, it's something that's frowned upon. So I liked how these two dudes was, you know, sharing their difference of opinions about some type of, it was a story that I did, you know, involving a racial riot or something. And so they was going back and forth without being disrespectful. But then it got to a point they started dropping little hints about each other's moms and just a whole bunch of crazy stuff. You know, to me, I just felt that these guys eventually got too emotionally invested in this story, you know, because at the end of the day, they comments ain't gonna change the world. They comments ain't gonna change what happened. Their comments probably are not gonna predict anything from prevent anything from happening in the future. So at some point in time, it becomes mindless and pointless to just constantly go back and forth, you know, over, like I say, a situation that no one wants to go back and try to make sure that their people stand out and are victorious in the next 15 to 20 race riots. You know what I'm saying? Or nobody wants to try to go back and gather the troops, rally up, you know, make their people strong in ways that they may have been, you know, in ways that they may have realized or felt that their people was weak in the past. So to me, after a certain point, it becomes really silly, right? And you know, in the telling of some of these stories, it made me think twice and then even refuse to tell some riot stories that I have. And the riot stories that I do have that I have refused to tell, I'm specifically talking about black on black riots, you know, between certain gangs, certain collectives, because a lot of these gangs are still involved in wars on the street. Because a lot of times when you have among the blacks two different collectives going at it in prison, a lot of times their respective hoods don't get along on the street. And so I definitely wouldn't want to add any fuel to the fire, right? You know, because I noticed, like, initially I did two stories where I talked about some of my first stories where the IEs got into it with the Bloods. That was like in 2003 in Ironwood. And then I did a story about where the IEs got into it with the Compton and Watts. Now, those stories were done in the very early stages of me starting to do YouTube. At the time, I don't even think I was monetized. I don't think that I was getting paid, you know. So I gave whole names, you know, I talked about hoods and this and that. And like I said, I was amazed by the amount of feedback I got, hostility from different groups and, you know, different sets and stuff, just how much people fed into that stuff. You know what I'm saying? So now that I realize that, I definitely don't want to contribute in a negative way to people clashing and stuff, man. Because I got a real good riot story, man, about two different hoods, and I'm just not gonna do, because like I say, I don't want to add fuel to the fire, man. But you know, as I realize some of these things on YouTube, some things I shy away from. And we also gotta remember, you guys, that when we get caught up in leaving comments about these racial riots and stuff like that, man, that there are, in my opinion, right, there are some YouTube channels, when they tell their stories, they take a diplomatic approach, or they have a diplomatic storytelling ability. where they can tell things in a manner where they'll get their point across, but they don't come off as biased or racist. You have some people who tell stories who are not capable of doing that. And so people can pick up on the hostility or the animosity one race or one person may have against another, and that's also not helpful in keeping people from getting hostile in the comments. The same with when people get interviewed. Some people have a certain tact about themselves when discussing matters that can possibly be upsetting to others if they feel that their race is being disparaged, and some people can't. And that's one prime reason also in prison why everybody is not selected or even allowed to go speak for their respective car, organization, or their race, because you definitely have to take a diplomatic approach when talking to other people about a situation that can potentially turn into a violent situation. Certain words, certain gestures, even certain body language or certain demeanors could possibly incite a situation that could have been resolved into a full-fledged riot because a person didn't know how to approach the situation in a diplomatic nature, right? So let's definitely try to keep that in mind when we see these stories and stuff that tend to get us riled up. Like I said, because everybody is going to have a connection to their race. But let's keep in mind, a lot of these stories are so old, they're done with, and life goes on, man. And if you're not willing to go back to prison and make sure your race or your car wins the next 10, 15 battles, and don't get caught up in that stuff. Anyway, definitely be sure, like I said, to go check out my updated playlist, man. You guys can find, I've updated the best stories that I got. They categorize. It'll make it easier for people, who like to binge watch, and you don't have to go through everything. But anyway, you already know what it is. Oh, I got some good stories coming up lined up, man. My thumbnail maker, he's making me a few good thumbnails because I think my stories do better when I put a thumbnail with them. I got a lot of good original stories lined up for y'all, man. So y'all stay tuned in. You already know what it is. It's your boy 16 to life. Resume normal program. Them crackers let me out the gate, now the pressure's on. We about to get this shit straight like a pressing cone. The wrong cat to get aggressive on. I bring the bitch up out of niggas while you think they got them dresses on. My reach long and that's the best type. To have some dirty white boys come and smoke you like a meth pipe. And leave your chest bright red like a fire truck. Kicking your mom's door at night, nigga, and tie her up. I'm wild as fuck and I'm respected by the new youth. I put this pistol in their ear like a Bluetooth. I blow their brains on they new coupe. And have red everywhere just like a function full of soup whoops. Tell your troops I deal with beef like a butcher. My 4-5 pump more guys than Ashton Kutcher. Line pusher, quick to bury your clown. Nigga, I stayed in the park like the merry-go-round. Get it?
The game greasy, bitch, the game need me. Oh, you niggas don't know my name. The game greasy, bitch, the game need me. I'm out here doing my thing. The game greasy, bitch, the game need me. I swear in time, the game greasy, bitch, the game need me.